Pierre Teilhard de Chardin was born in 1881 in the Auvergne region of France, attended Jesuit schools and joined the Society of Jesus aged 17. He completed most of his studies on Jersey and in England because religious teaching was banned in France then. He also spent time in Cairo. Having grown up surrounded by a stunning landscape of extinct volcanoes, he developed a deep early interest in geology and fossils. Teilhard's early life was fairly sheltered, but this changed in 1914 when he was drafted into the French army to serve as a stretcher bearer. In the course of this dangerous work, he came into contact with a far wider range of people than before, including many non-Christians. Teilhard lived in the period between the rise of Darwin's theory that humans were biologically descended through evolution from other animals and the doctrinally liberalising Second Vatican Council. During this whole era, the Roman Catholic Church was grappling with the issue of how to reconcile several of its traditional dogmas with the theory of biological evolution. These included the historicity of Adam and Eve, the notion that sin originated in an historical act of human disobedience, the existence of an earthly paradise, and the status of the soul as an entity distinct from the body. Teilhard is best known for his revisionary synthesis of theology and evolution, which more conservative figures within the Roman Catholic Church thought threatened doctrinal orthodoxy. Because of this, he was refused permission to publish theology. Most of his writings appeared only following his death in 1955. This meant he had no control over how they were used or interpreted. Teilhard is an early figure in the 20th century reconciliation of theological and scientific understandings of creation that included the acceptance by the Roman Catholic Church of the theory of the Big Bang. He himself thought the world was created out of a diffused atmosphere of extremely low density, which he termed a primordial chaos, through the formation of complex entities resulting from gravitational instability. From the early 1920s, Teilhard sought to reinterpret the dogma of original sin in light of modern evolutionary theory. He presents his investigation as mainly descriptive, stating his aim is to lay out the scientific findings that are leading Christian theologians to reconceive original sin and to indicate how believers are attempting to reconcile the dogma of the fall with the evidence of their experience and their understanding of history. He outlines two difficulties with the traditional representation of original sin. The first, science doesn't leave space for Adam. In one key respect, science and dogma agree, with each positing the human race as a unity. Yet whereas theologians promote monogenism, that is, the descent of all humans from a single individual or pair of ancestors, natural scientists defend gradual emergence through multiple descent lines. The second difficulty with the classic representation of original sin, which is linked to the first, is the belief in an earthly paradise. Teilhard questions whether death, suffering or evil could be absent anywhere or at any time. He sees both moral evil and notably physical evil as omnipresent across space and time, and thinks there could never have been a time or place from which they were absent. Teilhard very much sees the power and language of original sin as theologically salient. Indeed, for him, the view of sin as original, in the sense of being a condition of creation, with the fall having a magnitude that defies human representation, makes it more theologically important, not less. For Teilhard, sin doesn't originate in a specific event within the created order, but is the corollary of an originally imperfect world. So sin represents the imperfection of humans that's a consequence of us being in a process of becoming. Adam and Eve provide images of our search for God, which continues despite failures. Teilhard reckoned that his theology of original sin answered all scientific objections, yet he accepted that it excluded the possibility of an individual Adam and a primordial fall. Moreover, both the fall and recovery from it are, in historical perspective, not in a series in which one follows the other, but are coexisting tendencies within individual humans and in humankind collectively. As with sin, so with paradise, the concept remains relevant. Paradise is, for Teilhard, an image of a future state rather than an original condition. The earthly paradise is the salvation continually offered to all but rejected by many, which can be attained only when humans live in unity with their Lord. Teilhard was aware that the scholastic theological categories of creation, sin and paradise that he was contesting didn't represent the only historic understandings of these dogmas. When citing Irenaeus, Gregory of Nyssa or Gregory of Nazianzus, for example, he indicates awareness that theological terms may be given a range of interpretations. In particular, allegorical readings of Scripture were standard among patristic theologians, especially for doctrinal purposes. It was the textbook scholastic theology on which Teilhard had been raised that he was pushing back against, not Christian theology as an enterprise. Christianity, Teilhard believes, is essentially incarnational. His reflections on materiality were motivated by his theological concern to understand the embodiment which follows from this most fundamental tenet of the Christian faith, that the Word became flesh in Jesus Christ. By virtue of the Incarnation, matter is transformed, spiritualized, and directed towards the final end of the world, which is union with Christ and the spiritual vision of God. For Teilhard, Christ's coming into the world in the birth of Jesus in Palestine is necessarily specific. God comes to dwell in a particular human life and a particular material body. Teilhard fully defends Christ's humanity, but equally proclaims his divinity. The Incarnation is grounded in the eternal birth of Christ from the Father. Yet Teilhard has a strong sense that Jesus' historical birth occurred when, in Paul's words to the Galatians, the time had fully come, industrially, culturally, religiously, intellectually, and spiritually. With allusions to prehistory and the epochs of human religion that followed it, Teilhard states of Christ's birth, it called for all the fearsome anonymous toil of primitive humans, for the long drawn-out beauty of Egypt, for Israel's anxious expectation, the slowly distilled fragrance of Eastern mysticism, and the endlessly refined wisdom of the Greeks. It called for all these before the flower could bloom on the stock of Jesse and of humankind. Teilhard sees the effects of Christ's incarnation as extending through the created order. By virtue of Christ's coexisting natures, human and divine matter is spiritually oriented and directed. Yet, as God comes to dwell in Jesus, the whole world begins to be drawn from multiplicity into unity. Teilhard denies the dichotomy that sometimes presumed to exist between the historical Jesus and the Christ of faith. Only by allowing the person of Christ to bear, in Chalcedonian terms, two natures without confusion, without change, without division, and without separation, may the unified character of Christ's person be understood. Christ appears as a historical figure and as the bond of his own flesh and spirit, but reveals himself more fully through acting on the world and being present in it as its preserver and purpose. Teilhard sees a cosmic understanding of the Incarnation as a response to the challenges of modern critical thought that doesn't compromise theology in the way that both scholasticism and modernism did. he articulates Christ's universal power over creation in more than the extrinsic and juridical terms to which he found that power was often reduced, and communicates the full extent of this power. includes theology, to which Teilhard rose, needs to be met again today, and he may help us.